Firestarter. Will she have the power to survive?
Yours truly, Brevin Thompson, is back to start off 80s May. This is going to be my passion project for the entire month. So for this one, I decided to start off with a film that I haven't watched before until recently. So I decided to start off with Firestarter, the original 1984 film based off the classic book by Stephen King and starring Drew Barrymore. At first, I didn't watch it until I recently got it on Blu-ray, and after watching it, I think it's fine for what it is. And I was aware of this film. I mean, how I became aware of this film was, I recall watching like ads on like a VHS tape for The Mummy. I mean, I watched just like rewind and watch those like countless times. I mean, I would see some for like the classic Universal monster films, which I absolutely love. There was the Alfred Hitchcock collection, and there's the Universal thrillers, which Firestarter, I mean, which is where they showed Firestarter. And like I said, as a kid, I've always liked watching those ads. I mean, they were so fucking cool.
Universal thrillers.
And even though I was in kindergarten when I first watched those ads, I knew for a fact that those were definitely not meant for me, but I did not care. I certainly wanted to watch those movies. I mean, even as a young kid, I was a horror fan, but I knew my parents were like, you can't watch those. So my parents knew that back then, I mean, even though I was a horror fan, there was like some things that I wanted to watch that I wasn't ready for, so Firestarter was definitely off the table. But like I said, I haven't watched it before until I recently got it on Blu-ray. And like I said, it's fine for what it is. But before I discuss my thoughts on the film, I have my good friend Sarah from Sarah of Horror collaborating with me on this review for Firestarter. So before I discuss my thoughts on the film, now it's your turn, Sarah.
So hi, I'm Sarah of Horror, and thank you, Brevin, for allowing me to collaborate with you on this movie, Firestarter. So, Firestarter is from 1984. It's from the US. It's directed by Mark L. Lester. It's written by Stanley Mann, based on a novel by Stephen King, of course. Starring Drew Barrymore, David Keith, Martin Sheen, George C. Scott, Heather Locklear, and Art Carney, among a lot of characters. So in this one, we have a couple, Heather Locklear and David Keith. They participated in some potent medical experiments, and they gained the ability to speak with each other telepathically. And then they have a child later, and she is pyrokinetic. And you know, the child is of course played by Drew Barrymore. So I've seen this movie a couple of times now. What I like most about the film, I think, is Drew Barrymore's performance. I think that she did a really, really good job. It felt kind of real, like, you know, when she's trying to set everyone on fire, you know, it's sweating, you know, we can see she's really trying. It's hard, it's very believable. That was what I meant. It was very believable. And yeah, she did a really good job. And also the kind of father and daughter chemistry with her and David Keith really, really worked. It was also very believable. It seemed like a real father and daughter almost. Yeah. And then we get to see Heather, but not a lot, just in some flashbacks. What is a bit of a letdown in this movie is I feel the movie is a bit too long. It's almost 2 hours, and I feel that some scenes could have been cut down completely, especially when they are at the second half. Yeah, when they're at a special place. I don't want to spoil anything in case you haven't seen the movie, but I feel a lot of scenes could have been shortened down, or some could have been cut out. So the pacing isn't that great. It was really, it opens up with a really kind of intense chase scene to introduce the characters, but also the pacing in that scene was really good. So I'm like, okay, if the pacing stays like this, then, you know, it will be a really good movie. And it is a good movie. It's just, yeah, the pacing, it is a bit too long. Yeah. But I also do like some of the bad characters, especially George C. Scott. He really played the bad character really well. And he had a lot of like alone time scenes with Drew Barrymore, and he was so creepy. His character was so creepy, you know, touching her knee and feet and stuff, and, you know, getting real I was like, ew, gross. But I mean, that was the point. But I mean, I really like the fire starter scenes when people are, you know, caught on fire, stuff is flying everywhere, you know, just explosions. Really good. I thought that, yeah, those are really like, wow, yes, finally. So I have to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Yeah, Drew Barrymore is probably the best thing in this movie. So, yes. So thank you so much, Brevin, for allowing me to share my thoughts and opinions on Firestarter, and, you know, back to you.
We find out in flashbacks that David Keith and Heather Locklear's characters, Andy and Vicky, gain telepathic powers due to some drug, and their daughter, Charlie, or Charlene, well, she's most often called Charlie in the film, who's played by Drew Barrymore, gains pyrokinesis, and they try to teach her how to control her powers, but she finds it very difficult to control them, which makes her very dangerous. But after Vicky is killed by agents of the shop, Andy and Charlie are forced to go on the run. They eventually run into this very nice farming couple, but eventually the agents catch up to them, and when Charlie finally unleashes her pyrokinetic powers, she goes berserk on their asses and goes on a fucking killing spree. And she does it later again in the film's finale. And when it comes to, like, how they, like, show Charlie unleashing her power, the moments where you can see, like, the actors, like, caught on fire, I mean, that's some very impressive stunt work, and you just gotta give them props for that, and it's just mind-blowing. One thing I don't really see many people talk about is the cinematography, especially when you have the shots of Drew Barrymore unleashing her power. The shots of those alone, I mean, I think the cinematography in this film is, for the most part, underrated. I do agree with Sarah about how the second act kind of drags a little bit, because it is, at times, a bit boring, and that's kind of a big issue that I have about the film, is its pacing. Because eventually, when Andy and Charlie are eventually captured by agents of the shop, you have George C. Scott's character, Rainbird, who is trying to get close enough to Charlie and try to, like, gain her trust by being disguised as an orderly. And eventually, they start a friendship, and when he eventually gains her full trust, and when they've known each other for a while, that's when he'll make his move to kill her. That's how pure fucking evil this guy is. And there are moments where he can be a little bit creepy when he's around Drew Barrymore, and I don't know if they I think they hint at it about his character being either a pedophile or a child molester, even though it's never really, spelled out in the film. But they kind of give a bit of a red flag when it comes to this character. But the shop wants to keep Charlie alive so they can try to find a way to weaponize her pyrokinetic powers. And Charlie is only cooperating on the condition that she will see her father. But of course they're delaying that, while in reality they never want Charlie to see her father again, because they never intended to release them in the first place. But eventually Andy has enough power to mind control the head of the shop, who's played by Martin Sheen, of all people, and he's a treat to watch in any movie that he's in. Even if it's a bad film, you know that Martin Sheen is going to give his best, even if he is in a good or bad movie. So they all meet up in the barn. The head is eventually killed while he was still mind controlled. He's killed by Rainbird, and Rainbird eventually shoots Andy, right through the neck. Charlie gets pissed off and burns Rainbird to a crisp. And most of the finale is just Charlie just going on a fucking killing spree. And all that's missing from this moment of her just going berserk, unleashing her power on these assholes, is just her yelling, "You killed my father!"
Prepare to die.
There are like some moments where the effects look a little bit dated, especially with the fireballs that Drew Barrymore's character summons, and yeah, it kind of looks like a fireball that they kind of like set on fire. That's the best way that I can describe it. While she's like summoning these fireballs, it looks like a giant bowling ball that's set on fire, really. So after she destroys the shop, that she goes back to the farming couple and they adopt her, I suppose. And she goes to a newspaper to like blow the whistle on the shop, and that's Firestarter. Despite a lot of critics and most people kind of like hating or being kind of mixed on this film, I'd say it's okay. I mean, it's not one of the best Stephen King adaptations. I've seen far better than this. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's one of the worst Stephen King adaptations. I'd say it's average. It has its problems, mostly with its pacing and a few of the characters that I don't... There are characters in the film that I care about, and the actors gave excellent performances, especially David Keith, and especially Drew Barrymore. She is excellent in this film. And the villains in this film are pure fucking evil. As Stephen King villains often are at this point. What do you expect from Stephen King? But when it comes to the pacing, there are some moments where it can get a little bit slow, especially for the second act. When you have the shop wanting to do their experiments on Charlie to try to weaponize her powers, and you have the scenes with Andy trying to figure a way to escape the shop, and the scenes with Rainbird and Charlie, and that's kind of where it begins to get a bit boring. But the third act is just fucking nuts, and that's kind of what I like about Firestarter. You have great performances and holy shit moments in this film, and that's kind of what makes it work for me as a good, or at this point decent, Stephen King adaptation. So if you haven't checked it out by any chance, I'd say to give it a watch. I'm gonna give Firestarter a B. So what y'all think of this one? Let me know in the comments below. And guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.